Now supper was ended, and preparation was made for bed. The women were laid singly alone, and the boys by themselves. Now when Mercy was in bed, she could not sleep for joy, for that now her doubts of missing at last were removed further from her than ever they were before. So she lay blessing and praising God, who had had such favour for her. In the morning they rose with the sun and prepared themselves for their departure. But the interpreter would have them tarry a while, for, said he, you must orderly go from hence. Then said he to the damsel that first opened unto them, Take them, and have them into the garden to the bath, and there wash them, and make them clean from the soil which they have gathered by travelling. Then innocent the damsel took them, and had them into the garden, and brought them to the bath. So she told them that there they must wash and be clean. For so her master would have the woman to do that called at his house, as they were going on pilgrimage. They then went in and washed, yea, they and the boys and all, and they came out of that bath not only sweet and clean, but also much enlivened and strengthened in their joints. So when they came in, they looked fairer a deal than when they went out to the washing. When they were returned out of the garden from the bath, the interpreter took them and looked upon them, and said unto them, Fair as the moon. Then he called for the seal wherewith they used to be sealed that were washed in his bath. So the seal was brought, and he set his mark upon them, that they might be known in the places whither they were yet to go. Now the seal was the contents and sum of the Passover which the children of Israel did eat when they came out from the land of Egypt, and the mark was set between their eyes. This seal greatly added to their beauty, for it was an ornament to their faces. It also added to their gravity, and made their countenances more like them of angels. Then said the interpreter again to the damsel that waited upon these women, Go into the vestry, and fetch out garments for these people. So she went and fetched out white raiment, and lay down before him. So he commanded them to put it on. It was fine linen, white and clean. When the women were thus adorned, they seemed to be a terror one to the other, for that they could not see that glory each one on herself which they could see in the other. Now therefore they began to esteem each other better than themselves. For you are fairer than I am, said one, and you are more comely than I am, said another. The children also stood amazed to see into what fashion they were brought. The interpreter then called for a manservant of his, one Greatheart, and bid him take sword and helmet and shield. And take these my daughters, said he, and conduct them to the house called Beautiful, at which place they will rest next. So he took his weapons and went before them, and the interpreter said, Godspeed. Those also that belonged to the family sent them away with many a good wish. So they went on their way and sang, This place has been our second stage. Here we have heard and seen those good things that from age to others hid have been. The dunghill racer, spider hen, the chicken too, to me, hath taught a lesson, let me then conformed to it be. The butcher, garden, and the field, the robin and his bait, also the rotten tree doth yield me argument of weight. To move me for to watch and pray, to strive to be sincere, to take my cross up day by day, and serve the Lord with fear. Now I saw in my dream that they went on, and Greatheart went before them. So they went and came to the place where Christian's burden fell off his back and tumbled into a sepulchre. Here then they made a pause, and here also they blessed God. Now, said Christiana, it comes to my mind what was said to us at the gate, to wit that we should have pardon by word and deed, by word, that is, by the promise, by deed to it in the way it was obtained. What the promise is, of that I know something, but what it is to have pardon by deed, or in the way that it was obtained, Mr. Greatheart, I suppose you know, wherefore, if you please, let us hear your discourse thereof. Pardon by the deed done is pardon obtained by someone for another that hath need thereof, not by the person pardoned, but in the way, saith another, in which I have obtained it. So then, to speak to the question more at large, the pardon that you and Mercy and these boys have attained was obtained by another, to wit, by him that let you in at the gate, and he hath obtained it in this double way. He has performed righteousness to cover you, and spilt blood to wash you in. But if he parts with his righteousness to us, what will he have for himself? He has more righteousness than you have need of, or than he needeth himself. Pray make that appear. With all my heart, but first I must promise that he of whom we are now about to speak is one that has not his fellow. He has two natures in one person, plain to be distinguished, impossible to be divided, and to each of these natures a righteousness belongeth, and each righteousness is essential to that nature, so that one may be as easily cause the nature to be extinct as to separate its justice or righteousness from it. Of these righteousnesses, therefore, we are not made partakers, so as that they or any of them should be put upon us, that we might be made just and live thereby. Besides these, there is a righteousness which this person has, as these two natures are joined in one, and this is not the righteousness of the Godhead as distinguished from the manhood, nor the righteousness of the manhood as distinguished from the Godhead, but a righteousness which standeth in the union of both natures, and may properly be called the righteousness that is essential to his being prepared of God to the capacity of the mediatory office which he was to be entrusted with. If he parts with his first righteousness, he parts with his Godhead. If he parts with his second righteousness, he parts with the purity of his manhood. If he parts with this third, he parts with that perfection that capacitates him to the office of mediation. He has, therefore, another righteousness which standeth in performance or obedience to a revealed will, and that is it which he puts upon sinners, and that by which their sins are covered. Wherefore he saith, As by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one shall many be made righteous. But are the other righteousnesses of no use to us? Yes, for though they are essential to his natures and office, and so cannot be communicated unto another, yet it is by virtue of them that the righteousness that justifies is for that purpose efficacious. The righteousness of his Godhead gives virtue to his obedience. The righteousness of his manhood giveth capability to his obedience to justify, and the righteousness that standeth in the union of these two natures to his office giveth authority to that righteousness to do the work for which it is ordained. So then, here is a righteousness that Christ as God has no need of, for he is God without it. Here is a righteousness that Christ as man has no need of to make him so, for he is perfect man without it. Again, here is a righteousness that Christ as God-man has no need of, for he is perfectly so without it. Here then is a righteousness that Christ as God, as man, as God-man, has no need of with reference to himself. And therefore he can spare it, a justifying righteousness, that he for himself wanteth not, and therefore he giveth it away. Hence it is called the gift of righteousness. This righteousness, since Christ Jesus the Lord has made himself under the law, must be given away, for the law doth not only bind him that is under it to do justly, but to use charity. Wherefore he ought by the law, if he hath two coats, to give one to him that hath none. Now our Lord indeed hath two coats, one for himself, and one to spare. Wherefore he freely bestows one upon those that have none. And thus, Christiana and Mercy, and the rest of you that are here, doth your pardon come by deed, or by the work of another man. Your Lord Christ is he that has worked, and has given away what he wrought for to the next poor beggar he meets. But again, in order to pardon by deed, there must something be paid to God as a price, as well as something prepared to cover us withal. Sin has delivered us up to the just curse of a righteous law. Now from this curse we must be justified by way of redemption, a price being paid for the harms we have done. And this is by the blood of your Lord, who came and stood in your place instead, and died your death for your transgressions. Thus has he ransomed you from your transgressions by blood, and covered your polluted and deformed souls with righteousness, for the sake of which God passeth by you, and will not hurt you when he comes to judge the world. This is brave. Now I see there was something to be learned by our being pardoned by word and deed. Good Mercy, let us labor to keep this in mind, and my children, do you remember it also. But, sir, was not this it that made my good Christian's burden fall from off his shoulder, and that made him give thee 3 leaps for joy? Yes, it was the belief of this that cut those strings that could not be cut by other means, and it was to give him a proof of the virtue of this, that he was suffered to carry his burden to the cross. I thought so, for though my heart was lightful and joyous before, yet it is 10 times more lightsome and joyous now, and I am persuaded by what I have felt, though I have felt but little as yet, that if the most burdened man in the world was here, and did see and believe as I now do, it would make his heart the more merry and blithe. There is not only comfort and the ease of a burden brought to us by the sight and consideration of these, but an endeared affection begot in us by it. For who can, if he doth but once, think that pardon comes not only by promise, but be affected with the way and means of his redemption, and so with the man that hath wrought it for him? True, methinks it makes my heart bleed to think that he should bleed for me. O thou loving one, O thou blessed one, thou deservest to have me, thou hast bought me, thou deservest to have me all. Thou hast paid for me 10,000 times more than I am worth. No marvel that this made the water stand in my husband's eyes, and that it made him trudge so nimbly on. I am persuaded he wished me with him, but a vile wretch that I was, I let him come all alone. O mercy that thy father and mother were here, yea, and Mrs. Timorous also. Nay, I wish now with all my heart that here was Madam Wanton too. Surely, surely their hearts would be affected. Nor could the fear of the one, nor the powerful lusts of the other prevail with them to go home again and to refuse to become good pilgrims. You speak now in the warmth of your affection. Will it, think you, be always thus with you? Besides, this is not communicated to every one that did see your Jesus bleed. There were that stood by, and that saw the blood run from his heart to the ground, and yet were so far off this, that instead of lamenting, they laughed at him, and instead of becoming his disciples, did harden their hearts against him. So that all that you have, my daughters, you have by a peculiar impression made by a divine contemplating upon what I have spoken to you. Remember that it was told you that the hen, by her common call, gives no meat to her chickens. This you have, therefore, by a special grace. Now I saw still in my dream that they went on until they were come to the place that simple and sloth and presumption slept in when Christian went by on pilgrimage, and behold, they were hanged up in irons a little way off on the other side. Then said Mercy to him that was their guide and conductor, What are those 3 men, and for what are they hanged there? These 3 men were men of very bad qualities. They had no mind to be pilgrims themselves, and whosoever they could they hindered. They were for sloth and folly themselves, and whoever they could persuade with, they made so too, and withal taught them to presume that they should do well at last. They were asleep when Christian went by, and now you go by, they are hanged. But could they persuade any to be of their opinion? Yes, they turned several out of the way. There was Slow Pace that they persuaded to do as they. They also prevailed with one Short Wind, with one No Heart, with one Linger after Lust, and with one Sleepy Head, and with a young woman, her name was Dole, to turn out of the way, and become as they. Besides, they brought up an ill report of your Lord, persuading others that he was a taskmaster. They also brought up an evil report of the good land, saying it was not half so good as some pretend it was. They also began to vilify his servants, and to count the very best of them meddlesome, troublesome busybodies. Furthermore, they could call the bread of God husks, the comforts of his children fancies, the travel and labour of pilgrims things to no purpose. Nay, said Christiana, if they were such, they shall never be bewailed by me. They have but what they deserve, and I think it is well that they hang so near the highway, that others may see and take warning. But had it not been well if their crimes had been engraven on some plate of iron or brass, and left here, even where they did their mischiefs, for a caution to other bad men? So it is, as you well may perceive, if you will go a little to the wall. No, no, let them hang, and their names rot, and their crimes live forever against them. I think it a high favour that they were hanged before we came hither. Who knows else what they might have done to such poor women as we are, said Mercy. Then she turned it into a song, saying, Now then, you 3, hang there, and be a sign to all that shall against the truth combine, And let him that comes after fear this end, if unto pilgrims he is not a friend. And thou, my soul, of all such men beware, that unto holiness opposers are. Thus they went on, till they came at the foot of the hill Difficulty, where again their good friend Mr. Greatheart took an occasion to tell them of what happened there when Christian himself went by. So he had them first to this spring. Lo, said he, this is the spring that Christian drank of before he went up this hill, and then it was clear and good, but now it is dirty with the feet of some that are not desirous the pilgrims here should quench their thirst. Thereat Mercy said, And why so envious, trow? But said their guide, It will do if taken up and put into a vessel that is sweet and good, for then the dirt will sink to the bottom, and the water come out by itself more clear. Thus, therefore, Christiana and her companions were compelled to do. They took it up and put it into an earthen pot, and so let it stand till the dirt was gone to the bottom, and then they drank thereof. Next he showed them the 2 byways that were at the foot of the hill, where formality and hypocrisy lost themselves. And, said he, these are dangerous paths. 2 were here cast away when Christian came by, and although, as you see, these ways are since stopped up with chains, posts, and a ditch, yet there are that will choose to adventure here rather than take the pains to go up this hill. The way of transgressors is hard. It is a wonder that they can get into those ways without danger of breaking their necks. They will venture. Yea, if at any time any of the king's servants do happen to see them, and do call unto them and tell them that they are in the wrong ways, and do bid them beware the danger, then they will railingly return them answer and say, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Lord, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth. Nay, if you look a little further, you shall see that these ways are made cautionary enough, not only by these posts and ditch and chain, but also by being hedged up, yet they will choose to go there. They are idle, they love not to take pains. Uphill way is unpleasant to them, so it is fulfilled unto them as it is written, The way of the slothful man is as an hedge of thorns. Yea, they will rather choose to walk upon a snare than to go up this hill and the rest of this way to the city.